Welcome everyone to our open house and webinar on the Venus Science and Engineering program. Jumping right into the certificate program, we're gonna learn about the Venus atmosphere, aerodynamics, and science. And we're gonna really design, build, and operate learn how to design, build, and operate systems, robots, and aerostats in the Venetian atmosphere, and really apply engineering and aerospace principles and the math to model the flight performance, turbulence, materials, and more. And it's really a jam-packed, immersive research experience to where our first cohort is going to design, build, and launch an aerostat balloon demo on Earth, and later in the Venetian clouds is the vision. And here we're aiming to really make this part-time and flexible to working professional schedule with several scholarships available and a lot of lectures with on behalf of these organizations here, with our team, with Humans to Venus and NASA. Here's an overview on the schedule and curriculum that's recently been updated. And so we've segmented the curriculum into two categories here, primarily focused on Venus, science and engineering, and then also category 2 here, where we can focus more on the design, build, and launch for the balloon demo. And thanks to Dr. Jeffrey Landis here, we recommended that we add more about Venus, and so this is actively being updated to hopefully reflect more about our next door neighbor. And here are instructors and lecturers here. So think of Dr. Jeffrey Landis here as one of the pioneers for Venus, I would say, and possibly fathers, and then I'll be helping out with lecturing along with Rohit as well. And we're really coordinating a lot of impressive speakers, such as Guillermo from Humans to Venus, Dr. Siddharth Pandey, who may be with us today, and from NASA JPL, and Lisa from Venus Academy, and Terry Rector, and we're discussing with some other folks from JPL and other space agencies, and open to suggestions too, and really helping you guys design the program that we all want to. So here's a pre-program timeline here, real quick. The applications are due February 15th, and the course starts in January or June, and ends around July, really August. I encourage you to apply here with this link here. And here's more about a bit more about the balloon demo and flight that's planned in the USA. We're planning an in-person component that would be optional, and up to 3 to 7 or so days, depending on a lot of variables, and still also exploring some good research goals and experiments and data, and somewhere to launch. And so look forward to working to help figure out figure more about this fun puzzle. So I think that's it for our slides today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. It's great to see this many names and faces who have an interest in Venus. Just a brief overview of myself and who I am, my background. So my name is Rohith, but please feel free to call me Ro. And I'm a London-based management consultant by profession, specializing in corporate strategy and transformation, which I'll leave at that because I know that this webinar is not about that, and I don't want to bore you guys any further. In terms of university, I read biochemistry for 3 years at King's College London, which some of you may be or may not be familiar with. Growing up, I always had an interest in space exploration and the prospect of humanity becoming a spacefaring civilization. Although up until recently, I never really thought I could add value to the sector without being from an aerospace background or something really technical. But quite recently, I suddenly found myself having an urge to break back into the space sector in some shape or form, and try and add some value with my consulting background. And this led me on to take on an MIT certification on the new space economy, as well as cold messaging and emailing people on my LinkedIn network, just to kind of understand what was going on within the sector at the moment within space, and understand any potential gaps in the market that I could potentially tap into in the forms of a sustainability consulting startup. But that was kind of like my initial way into the space sector from my background. But eventually, through my networking, I actually came across a guy called Guillermo Online, who is the founder of Humans to Venus Foundation, which has a mission of establishing a permanent human presence in the Venusian atmosphere by 2050, which sounds completely sci-fi, I know. And coming from a non-space background, that is exactly what I thought. But at the same time, it filled me with such excitement at the prospect of contributing to such an ambitious goal, right? And it's something I really wanted to get involved with. So reached out to him, and long story short, eventually down the line, and talking to Guillermo in some depth, I ended up taking on the responsibilities of leading the Humans to Venus Foundation as executive director, which is why I'm in front of you guys today in the middle of my workday. But yeah, so with that being said, that's a brief overview of myself. Who are we and what is Humans to Venus Foundation? So I will go to the next slide. So simply put, Humans to Venus Foundation is a US-based non-profit organization focused on establishing the largest global community of general and professional Venus enthusiasts, as well as promoting Venus as a potential long-term destination for humanity. And our programs support anything that is Venus-focused in terms of exploration, science, or education initiatives, which is kind of why we're linking in with the Multi-Planet University as well on this collaboration. So there are two pillars that kind of underpin our global community, as you can see on the right-hand side of that slide. So the first bucket or pillar, if you will, is public outreach. And this kind of list over there kind of consists of the means by which we aim to reach the general public and anyone that has an interest in Venus or making humanity a multi-planet species. So you can see there we've got like a website which we're kind of looking to relaunch in early this year, e-newsletters, social media presences, media relations and conferences as well, to name a few things on our agenda for this year. If we move on to the private community side, this is essentially like a gated community of selected individuals from our wider community that we tap into via our public outreach measures, who we believe, who have expressed an interest in contributing to our initiatives, and also who we think would be best suited to realizing our vision of pushing Venus forward as a potential long-term target for humanity to colonize in the future, if not just to get a research in more detail and establish a longer presence there in the future. Just to kind of reiterate again, we are very early stages in terms of development of our organization, and we are in the process of kind of laying out our foundations. But just to give you a high-level overview of what we have going on this year and what I will personally would be working towards from the foundation side, I will not run through this in detail because in the interest of time, but just starting from the top with internal branding and moving clockwise, these are kind of the activities on my plate at the moment with Humans to Venus Foundation. So in terms of internal branding, marketing, with the e-newsletter that we have sending out every month to our subscribers of our website, we also plan to have a social media presence as established before to kind of tap into different target demographics and different audiences, potential people who would have an interest in Venus, and try and grow that community that way. Education outreach was the key one, I think, because it relates to why we are here today. So in terms of primary school kids and secondary school kids, the younger generation, we're collaborating with Andy Aldrin from the Aldrin Foundation on creating Venus-focused content specifically for that age group. And in terms of university onwards and beyond, we are collaborating with the multi-planet university, so Cole and Jeffrey, on this Venus-focused course, which is the first one. I think this is the first Venus-focused course that multi-planet university is launching, the VSE311 course. So that should be fun. And we're in the process at the moment of kind of planning that out and scoping what exactly the contents will be. But we will support this through our community of Venus enthusiasts that we have within our global community at the moment from Humans to Venus Foundation, which includes a lot of people who are within academia and quite high up in the space sector who kind of contribute to Venus and have lent their names to supporting Venus as a potential target for humanity to kind of reach for. And community engagement, I won't go into that in detail, but it's just going to be cases of having summit events and conferences throughout the year and into the future as well. But that is kind of like a whistle-stop tour of Humans to Venus Foundation itself. Hopefully that makes sense. I know I've gone quite quickly through that, but essentially, if any of you have an interest in Venus, I'm sure you do because you wouldn't be signing up to this course otherwise, in Venus or making humanity a spacefaring civilization, then please just reach out to us. We'll be happy to kind of hear from you and get you involved or get you part of our community. And there's lots of exciting things to come. So please feel free to email me. My email is on screen there. But with that being said, I will pass back to Cole and Jeffrey. So hopefully their screen sharing issues have been fixed. Fingers crossed.
I guess I'm also supposed to talk about myself a little bit. I'm Jeff Landis. In part of my life, I work at NASA Glenn Research Center. I've worked on a number of different projects. For many years, I was associated with Mars missions, Mars Pathfinder, Mars exploration rovers. Recently, I have been doing advanced concepts, mostly working with the NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts Program. But I should also mention in the other half of my life, I'm a science fiction writer. So I have an interest in both speculative science and real science, both of which fascinate me. I've also been doing a lot of work on future missions to Venus. So working hard on trying to get us to another planet. Just a quick comparison of Earth and Venus. Earth and Venus are actually very close to neighbors in terms of size and gravity, but very, very different in other properties. It gets twice the solar insolation, that is the incident solar radiation, but turns out actually Venus is almost blindingly white. So the amount of solar radiation actually absorbed is much less than Earth. However, because of the high pressure carbon dioxide atmosphere, we have a surface temperature of 450 C. That makes it seriously difficult to go down to the surface. Nevertheless, both the Americans and the Soviets have gone down to the surface. The Americans with the Pioneer Venus mission, 1978. 3 of the probes made it to the surface. One of them kept broadcasting for, much of an hour after reaching the surface. But of course, the real heroes of Venus exploration were the Soviets, with a number of missions, including the Venera missions and also the Halley mission. On the way to Halley's Comet, they dropped 2 probes into the atmosphere of Venus, 2 landers, also 2 balloons. Just a quick view. I mentioned how hot Venus is on the surface, about 450. But like the Earth, it gets cooler as you get higher. And right up here around the 54-kilometer level, it gets very, very Earth-like, below 100 degrees C, down to, actually, if you go up high enough, even to the freezing point of water. And the Russians took advantage of that. They floated 2 balloons in the atmosphere of Venus back in, 1986, I think. Tricky problem. I didn't mention actually that the beautiful white clouds of Venus are droplets of concentrated sulfuric acid. So to keep the sulfuric acid from degrading the balloons, in fact, the balloon exterior coating was Teflon, which is not attacked by sulfuric acid. But here are the balloons. They floated for 48 hours at that 54-kilometer altitude. I have to say they floated for at least 54 kilometers. In about 2 days, they rotated out of sight of the Earth and presumably kept floating for a while. They probably overheated after a while and died. But all we know is that they were still working at the time that they floated out of the atmosphere out of the view of the Earth, sorry. So I've been actually very interested in going beyond that. We've been looking a lot at future atmospheric exploration of Venus. This was in fact one of my first concepts for a Venus solar airplane. But there's been a lot of study on future aerial platforms for Venus, and they have included both balloons, both balloons that float at a constant altitude, such as the superpressure balloon viewed at the left. Some balloons that float at variable altitude can go up and down. And of course, also aircraft, both solar-powered aircraft and also some hybrid airships that use both lighter than air gases as well as lifting from the wings. This is sort of the design evolution of one of the Venus aircraft styles. I showed the initial. The whole trick of Venus aircraft is to put as much solar power on the aircraft as possible. One of the ways to do this, in fact, has been to put solar cells on both the top and the bottom of the wings, because we want to fly above the thick white clouds. So we're getting nearly as much light reflected from the clouds upward as we get downward from the sun. Here's just a view showing that, yes, for these missions, we really have to fold up the aircraft into an aeroshell to enter the atmosphere, just showing that it's relatively straightforward to do that. There is a video, in fact, down here at the bottom, animation showing one of our more ambitious missions to Venus. I'll put that link in the chat at some point, just so that if you want to look at the video animation, you can see it. I do want to say we're also interested in exploring the surface of Venus. That's challenging, but not necessarily impossible. We basically need high temperature electronics, motors and actuators, and high temperature power systems, but they don't seem to be impossible. Just one of the objects we're working on, we're working very hard at developing electronics that operates at Venus temperatures. I love this image. That red glow is, in fact, yes, they've heated it red hot, but this is a light emitting diode, and you can see that blue light emitting diode operating at actually as high as 650 degrees C. That's 200 degrees above Venus temperature. So we're working hard at electronics for Venus. What we don't have yet is powerful microprocessors, but we do have, looks like, the ability to make transistors. We can make radios. We can make relatively straightforward control circuits. And we're working on microprocessors as hard as we can, not ready yet. Ultimately, we would love to go to the Venus with humans. It's pretty hostile on the surface, but as we pointed out before, if you go up a little bit higher in altitude, right here about the 55-kilometer altitude, we can get to temperatures that are very, very Earth-like. So people have proposed sending humans to Venus. Early proposals said suspend them below moons. Study from NASA Langley, they called the High Altitude Venus Operational Concept, HAVOC, building on some of my proposals from a little bit earlier, saying, yes, we can make a base for humans and study Venus from floating above the clouds. Ultimately, I think you could use this as a base for robots operating on the surface of Venus with the high temperature electronics. But looking beyond, Venus may be superior to the other places that we've talked about that you might have humans. You could make a habitat at Venus. You don't have to live inside a pressure vessel. You could live at a altitude where the outside pressure is livable. Of course, you can't breathe the atmosphere. It will be carbon dioxide with a little bit of sulfur compounds that you also would not like to breathe. The gravity turns out to be just about right. You want to lose a little bit of weight? Okay, you'll lose weight going to Venus, but you don't have to worry about what's the effect of microgravity on humans. We get radiation shielding by the atmosphere. So Venus floating in the atmosphere is not a high radiation environment. We have volatiles available in the atmosphere. We have nitrogen, of course. We have oxygen in the form of carbon dioxide, which can be separated into carbon monoxide and oxygen. I think Bruce McKenzie already mentioned that. We have hydrogen in the form of sulfuric acid. You can separate out the hydrogen. We have everything that we need. And if we find the right altitude, the temperature's about right. So in many ways, it's the most Earth-like environment, the solar system, outside of Earth. And it turns out not hard to float on Venus. In fact, oxygen and nitrogen, breathable air, is a lifting gas in the atmosphere. It's about half as good as, say, a helium balloon, but that's not bad if you just scale up. If you can make an envelope of 400 meters radius, you could lift the Empire State Building on it, and the humans could live inside the gas envelope. You would not be confined to a low volume habitat. I just love this picture. This is by Don Dixon for the cover of a book by Mike McCallum, and showing a floating city. So a little bit of question where you want to float. Temperature and pressure are both about right. If you get up to that altitude, about 56 kilometers, at that altitude, temperature is right. Pressure is about half of Earth pressure, but that just means you have to ramp the atmospheric mix up to 37% oxygen instead of 20% oxygen. Heat rejection still needs to be dealt with. You might be a little bit higher to get to the colder atmosphere where you can reject heat. Another sort of pretty image I like. What I like about this actually is it shows the gas envelope being made of multiple different individual little bubbles of gas, so that a leak in any one of them is not going to be catastrophic. You will have hours, probably days, to deal with any leaks. If you can build one city, why not build many cities? In principle, you could make hundreds, thousands, possibly even millions of cities in the atmosphere. So that's mostly just a summary of some of the very interesting things you can do in the atmosphere of Venus. We've been working on it for a while. The surface is a tough challenge with the high temperature, but the atmosphere is ideal in temperature and pressure for human life. It's a better place to go than Mars. So my conclusion is, let's colonize Venus. It's there, it's habitable, we can do it. Okay, thank you.